Hello again. Michael Rubin, glad to have you here. I know often, people have these like long introductions and, they try to, come up with clever ways to introduce people. I decided I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Why are you here?
Villanova dropout.
Villanova dropout. That's a good excuse.
How's that for succinct, to the point? Haven't been back here since, I was thinking about it, 1990. I went here for about 6 weeks. It's my first time back.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you came back to the law school. This is the other side of the tracks, but...
But I would have been here for a week, max. I could have never made it 6 weeks here. Zero chance.
And you don't employ lawyers now or anything, right?
No, we actually have an act to employ as many lawyers as possible in all of our companies. We've always been very good at that. I always create a little drama that gets extra lawyers employed as well.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. So you're a Philadelphia kid?
Well, I live today about between 3 and 4 minutes from here. So it's a long journey. It was my longest commute ever to speak with a group of people. So thank you, everybody. And I grew up in Lafayette Hill, about 15 minutes from here.
Nice. And entrepreneur blood in you from the beginning, I assume?
Definitely. And look, I'm one who actually believes it's something you're born with or you're not. So different people can think of it different ways, but I really believe it's either in you or it's not. And for me, I was, it was the only thing I was good at. I was a terrible student, as I just displayed by saying I went here for 6 weeks. I was a terrible athlete, as you can see when you look at me. And I was good at one thing. I was always good at business. My last memory of Villanova, and I was just thinking about it, I remember sitting in the parking lot every morning. The phone was like, a brick, the mobile phone you had then. I'd be on the phone. I'd be buying and selling closeout footwear, because that was my business when I was 18 years old when I went to Villanova. And I really never made it to class, but I was in that parking lot back there. I was in that parking lot for hours a day for the 6 weeks that I went here.
That's awesome. Sounds like my experience. I sold law school outlines out in the parking lot.
Any customers?
Huh?
Any customers?
Oh yeah.
Good.
Oh, the first year.
I hope you weren't selling.
I
hope you weren't selling the grades or the.
Yeah, right.
You go to jail for that.
I wasn't
you go to jail for that these days.
Exactly. So talk about risk taking. Talk about your tolerance, maybe different than others, for truly playing out entrepreneurship.
Yeah, look, I'm a big believer that you need to take risks in business to accomplish big things. I think so many people have so many good ideas, but they're actually scared to act on them. For me, I'm almost the opposite. I almost act too quickly. So I think that I think the difference between me today and me 30 years ago is I'm more calculated in the risks that I take, but I think taking risks is absolutely critical to getting big results in business. And I think you'd see that in really my entire, work to date. And, I'm just getting started with my entire work to date. I think we've taken big risks in so many of the things that we've done. And by the way, I fail all the time. And that's fine. I was just saying to somebody yesterday, I still like failing. You fail, you figure out what went wrong, and then you figure out how to turn that into the next success. So many people are scared to fail. If you're scared to fail, you're not going to do anything.
Yeah.
So, to me, you just got to go for it and, put more W's on the board than you put L's on the board.
No, I agree. That's a great philosophy. Talk to us about the vision of Fanatics. Obviously, you've become best known for Fanatics. It's not all you've done in your business career, but tell us about how that evolved, how you got involved, and how the company has taken shape over the years.
Yeah. So let me maybe back up. So my old company, GSI Commerce, that's where we started the licensed sports business, and we started that business in 1999. eBay acquired it in 2011. And I bought back Fanatics in 2011 from eBay. They didn't want to own any inventory, any businesses that owned inventory. So I bought the business back. It was about a $250 million business in 2011. What I knew from running GSI Commerce from 1999 until 2011 was that retail was changing dramatically, and there were two companies that were changing retail dramatically. It was Amazon and Alibaba. And these two companies were sucking up more than all of the growth of retail growth. So whatever retail is growing, Amazon and Alibaba were sucking up more, they were sucking up that growth plus even more. So I had a huge respect for these two companies, and it made me realize that if you're going to be in e-commerce, if you don't have a completely differentiated business model, you should like literally go home, close shop, quit, and like find a new career. And there are so many people in e-commerce that have tried to be undifferentiated, and they're selling the same shit as Amazon, and they really have no reason to be. And so when I bought back Fanatics in 2011, I'd say it was in the same camp that it really wasn't differentiated. It sold the same product that was commonly available. And so we believed the way to really win in e-commerce against Amazon and Alibaba, and by the way, this came from a complete respect and admiration for Amazon and Alibaba, was that you need to completely differentiate what you do. So we basically believed there were two things we had to do. One, we had to verticalize the business. And to verticalize the business, that means you design, develop, and sell to consumers what you make. And that's not what most people do in retail, okay? That's kind of like what an H&M does. It's what a Gap does. It's what a Lululemon does. But it's not what a Toys R Us did, or a Sports Authority or a Best Buy does today. And so my belief was you had to be vertical, and then whatever you sold that wasn't vertical, it had to be exclusive, that you couldn't find it commonly available. So today, the company's gone from $250 million in 2010, the year before we bought it. This year will be about 2.5, 2.6 billion. And of the, nearly, 10x in sales, I'd say in 2010, maybe 2 or 3% of our business came from our own products, and today it's probably on track to be about 2/3 next year. So it's gone from 2 or 3% to kind of, call it, 65, 70% of the business, our own products. And that differentiation is what's given us this great moat that most people in e-commerce don't have and can't succeed against Amazon and Alibaba. And so for me, I think we had the right vision up front to be able to sell exclusive product that wasn't going to be commonly available, throughout the internet. And that's been, a big reason for our success. Now, what's the end result? Fans get a much broader assortment of merchandise today. So fans are winning. The leagues and teams make a lot more money from this business than they used to make under the old model. And they're taking all of the customer data that they have from this big business. We have like 40 or 50 million customers today. All the teams and leagues are using that to better communicate with their fans. And so fans get a much better experience. The leagues and teams make a lot more money. And we actually have a business model that's actually a great long-term business versus we'd be having a little bankruptcy sale sign above us if we didn't do this. So complete change over the last 7 or 8 years.
So for the audience's benefit, describe what you sell.
Yeah. So how many people in this audience are sports fans? See some, okay. Who's ever not, we got to convert you guys immediately. By the way, Sixers playoffs start tomorrow, so anyone who's not a sports fan, we're going to have a introductory program for Sixers that begins tomorrow for the playoffs. So we sell, if you think about in the NFL, where's Brian Westbrook? His jersey, which we sold millions of dollars worth of his jersey, we would sell that jersey. We sell today, Tom Brady jerseys. We sell Carson Wentz jerseys. We sell really anything in sports. So whether it's an NFL jersey, a Sixers T-shirt, if you're a sports fan and you go to NFL Shop, NBA Store, MLB Store, we power and operate all of these stores, and we operate the flagship Fanatics store. So anytime you buy licensed sports merchandise online, a lot of that merchandise comes from our company.
So today, the brand Fanatics actually means something as well. So that, I drove by the Audi Stadium down in D.C. the other day. I'm like, whoa, there's the Fanatics logo up there. So, tell me how that, has evolved as a philosophy to brand with Fanatics. Yes,
so I think when we started with the 5 leagues e-commerce rights. So if you look back to when I bought the business back in 2011, we owned the NFL Shop, the NBA Store, NHL Store, MLB Store, and NASCAR's e-commerce business. And that was the $250 million business. Well, we recognized first we were only in pro sports. We wanted to get into college. So we bought this little company called Fanatics, which kind of did what we did in pro sports, they did in college. And then we said, you know what, we want Fanatics to kind of be the super site, have everything that we sell. And so today, Fanatics is actually our biggest site. Of the $2.5 billion that we'll do this year, that's probably about 1/3 of our business goes through the flagship Fanatics site. And Fanatics is also the biggest brand of merchandise that we sell. The Fanatics brand is about 1/3 of what we sell. But we make, and a lot of people don't know this, we make Under Armour licensed products. We make Nike licensed products. So today, starting next year, in the NFL and Major League Baseball, anytime you buy a Nike baseball jersey from the Padres or you buy a Eagles NFL jersey, that's all being made by us as well on a completely vertical basis.
Got it. Tell us about VCommerce. What is it? What's it mean? And what's it going to mean going forward?
Yeah, so VCommerce is really what I was talking about before. It's being vertical. And again, if you think about what are the best retail, if you just look, forget about e-commerce. If you think about what's going to work in retail over the next decade or two, it's going to be companies that aren't selling commonly available merchandise. Because if you have a commonly available product, you're going to go to Amazon, or if you live in China, you're going to go to Alibaba, which is Tmall there, and you're going to search for that product. You're going to buy it from their site. So what VCommerce is about is really being about vertical. So the best comparison I give you again is like I think about Lululemon, I think about H&M, I think about Zara, I think about companies that they create their own brand and they're vertical. And I believe the difference between those companies and what we're doing, and we're really the leader of VCommerce online, is that we're primarily through e-commerce. So if you started a new H&M in 2019, you wouldn't start it with opening thousands of stores. You do it through the internet. And what we did was said, look, we're going to build this highly vertical business, but we're going to do it through the internet. So today, 75, 80% of our sales go through the internet, where somebody like an H&M or a Zara or a Uniqlo or a Gap probably does 10 to 20% of their sales. And so it's VCommerce, but it's driven through the internet.
So how do you battle the behemoth, Amazon?
Yeah, it's again what I said before. It's very straightforward, which is if you try to battle Amazon by selling the same stuff that Amazon sells, you should literally give up. It is you cannot win that battle. And so many people, I have so many people come to me and say, I've got this great idea. I want anything. If the products you sell are commonly available by Amazon or Alibaba, they are going to beat you like the best. And I just had this conversation. I have a friend of mine who owns a multi-billion-dollar retail business. I had this conversation last week, and the business has not been doing well. They told me all the things they were going to do to fix their business. And I looked at them and I said, I love you. Literally sell your business today, liquidate your inventory, shut your business down, and run away. Because every year it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And they looked at me like I had 7 heads. I said, you're going to thank me if you listen to me, because I can tell you all you're going to do is lose all of your money if you keep trying to stay at this. So if you're not differentiated, highly differentiated, you can't win in retail. And whether it's retail in physical stores or e-commerce, you have to be completely differentiated with the product that you're selling and the experience that you have.
So how does the new Nike agreement with NFL and MLB play out, and how does it impact fans around the world?
Yes, so when we started getting vertical, the first thing we did was get the rights to make fan gear. So it was, how do we make a Sixers hoodie, or how do we make a Padres or Eagles, T-shirt? And so we started with fan gear, and we did all of that under the Fanatics brand. And then what happened was the leagues recognized that they had this relationship with the performance brands like Nike, Adidas, and Under Armour. And there was a really important relationship, but they were essentially great at one part and not as good at the other part. The part they were great about was the marketing aspect. Like, a Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, these were great marketing partners that brought great value to the NFL, the NBA, MLB, to have them on the court, on the ice, on the field. But they actually weren't great at monetizing the licensed sports business and making sure they covered every fan of the merchandise. So what the leagues did was they split the rights into two parts versus one. One, they figure out who's the best performance brand to work with to market their sport and to have the right arrangement with from a marketing perspective. And then they'd bring Fanatics in to monetize the transaction. So starting next year in all of baseball and all of the NFL, everything that's manufactured, everything that has the Nike brand will be manufactured by Fanatics on a vertical basis. So whether we're selling Fanatics merchandise or Nike merchandise, we're making that merchandise on a vertical basis. So, a league like the NFL or Major League Baseball, they go out and they sell the marketing rights to Nike and the merchandise rights to us.
Nice.
And by the way, the great thing for fans, and how does it really affect fans, is a much broader assortment of merchandise, because we wake up and go to bed every day obsessed with how do we grow the licensed sports business. And that's why we've gone from $250 million in 2010 to $2.5, $2.6 billion in 2019. And so we're figuring out how do we, quadruple the business over the next decade. And, Nike and Adidas and Under Armour, they woke up and said, how do we leverage these marketing partnerships to sell more branded apparel and footwear, which is the primary reason they did it. So the leagues were incredibly smart for splitting these rights into two sets of rights and having us figure out how to leverage those rights to really grow the licensed business and having the performance brands really be able to market their sports.
So I guess that plays into my next question. you're a disruptive company. You have been over the time you've been involved with it. What's left to disrupt? Where do you go from here? What's Fanatics look like in the future?
Yeah, so I'd say, I still look at Fanatics as just getting started, and I really feel that way. I mean, we've only been at it for 7 or 8 years. I think, my goal is to get this to a $10 billion plus company over the next decade. So we're still 75% smaller than that. I think there's huge growth in college. We're just really getting into that business, and we're taking kind of a vertical model into the college space today. We are just starting to expand globally. We've got a small but fast-growing soccer business, what we call football, everywhere else in the world but America. So huge opportunities there. I think we're now we have a global marketplace strategy where we're taking the assortment of merchandise we have and putting it in every global marketplace throughout the world. So we think that's a big opportunity. So I'd say for Fanatics, while we've had nice growth to date, I feel like we're just getting started.
Great. So let's shift gears. Talk about sports team ownership. You've dabbled.
Yeah.
You've had a little fun, I assume.
I'll let you know when the playoffs are over.
So
it's fun. It's fun if you're in the playoffs in June. If you're not in the playoffs in June, it's less fun.
If you're an NBA owner.
Yeah.
Or an NHL.
Or hockey. Yeah.
And any other sports in the future?
Look, I think everybody knows I'm one of the owners of the Sixers and Devils, and that's been a great experience for me to date. I was fortunate to get involved with Josh Harris and David Blitzer when they put the deal together in 2011. There's a great small group of owners, and it's been both a good financial investment, but much more importantly, it's been a ton of fun. I've learned a tremendous amount from it. So if you can, grow your capital significantly well, really enjoying what you're doing and learning a lot, I think that's very important. It's no secret I failed miserably trying to buy the Carolina Panthers last year. I looked at that as also a great experience. To me, again, I talk about, failing to me is great. I thought, it was a great opportunity. I went after it hard. We didn't get the right result. And to me, it's like right back at it the next day. So, I'd like to, the two sports that I love are the NBA and the NFL. I'm a sports fan in all sports, but the two sports I'm super passionate about are the NBA and the NFL. I'd certainly, it's not a secret that I'd like to own my own NFL team over time. And, I think to me, if you just work your ass off and stay focused, and you're unrelenting, you can kind of make a lot of things happen.
So no baseball, no global soccer.
Yeah, I'm not a baseball global soccer guy from an ownership perspective in any meaningful way. I think you've got to be. I think to own these businesses, at the end of the day, you represent your city, you represent the team. I think you've got to be, incredibly passionate about it. And I have that for basketball and football. I don't have that for the other sports in the same way. So I don't think I'd make a great owner. I think you can't just do a financial transaction. Even if you came to me today and said that I could buy the Philadelphia Phillies at 10 times EBITDA, I wouldn't want to do it just because I wouldn't be the best person to do that. Now, fortunately, we have a great owner in John Middleton, and he's doing a great job with the team. But, I mean, if someone came to me and just said, here's a baseball team, it's a great financial transaction, but you need to go to 81 home games, and the same thing would be for hockey or soccer. It's just, you've got to do what you're incredibly passionate about, and I'm incredibly passionate about the NBA and the NFL.
That's fair. Tell us about Meek Mill. How'd you meet? How'd your relationship evolve? And what's that about?
Meek and I met 5 or 6 years ago at an NBA All-Star game. It was actually pretty interesting because my daughter at that point was a huge fan of his ex-fiancée, Nicki Minaj, and they were sitting randomly next to us. So my daughter, who doesn't really get excited about meeting anybody, starts like gushing at Nicki, and said like, Kylie, tone it down a little bit, and she starts talking to Nicki, and as Meek and I are bored as the two ladies are talking about music, and my daughter's getting a good lesson on what's coming next for Nicki. Meek said to me, who are you? I said, who are you? And he said, oh, you're the guy. I know who you are. You're the guy from you're one of the guys from the Sixers. And I said, what do you do? He said, I'm a rapper. I'd never heard of him. And, within a minute or two, he started asking me tons of questions. And it was kind of like, I barely made it to high school. I missed 70 days my senior year of high school. I came here for all of about 6 weeks. I don't think I made it through a semester. And the way I always learned was like, I'm like a sponge. I ask lots of questions, and I still do it today. That's my learning process. Well, he was doing the same thing with me. He's saying, hey, I want to do this deal. How would I do this? And hey, I've got this idea in sports, and what do you think about that? And he was just peppering me with questions. And I kind of saw with him, like, a version of me that grew up in a different environment. And so, we became, mildly friendly at the beginning. To be honest, the Sixers were going through a tough rebuilding process. We kind of stunk at that point. He said, hey, I'd love to come to some games with Nicky. And so, 4 years ago, the most entertaining things about our game was when he came with Nicky to the games. We were going through a tough rebuild. And, he started coming to our games a lot. And, we became, we were just mildly friendly. And, maybe after he'd been to his 10th game, I said to him one time, I said, hey, I'm going to I'm leaving here with a bunch of friends. I'm going to the Borgata, which is a casino, in New Jersey. I said, do you want to come? And he said to me, I'm not allowed. And I literally looked at him. I said, like, do you need a note from your mother? And he's like, no, I'll go to jail. I'm like, you go to jail for going to the casino with me? He's like, yeah, I'm on probation. I'm like, how's this probation thing work? I had no idea. And, he didn't go that night, fortunately, because, he didn't go to jail that time for not breaking the law. But we became, over the next, 3-4 years, we became really, really friendly. And so I kept hearing from him about this crazy situation. He couldn't leave, Pennsylvania. He couldn't work. And I guess it was the summer of 2017. He was always around. And I kind of looked at him one day. I'm like, dude, get a job. Like, what's going on with you? I'm like, you're around too much. He's like, Michael, I'm not allowed to leave Philadelphia. And that's when it hit me like, this is so unfair. Here's this guy whose family and, his network of people depend on him to tour and perform, and he's not allowed to leave Philadelphia. So I started trying to help him to figure out how to deal with this probation thing that I had no experience with, because now he'd become one of my really good friends. We were talking on the phone every day the previous year or two. And needless to say, I'm sure most people know the story, but he was in New York. He popped a wheelie on a motorcycle. He put it on Instagram Live. And the next day, he was at a kids' charity basketball tournament, and 21 police officers showed up for what he thought was to give him a police escort to go to the next place. Except they weren't giving him a police escort. They were taking him to prison or to jail for popping a wheelie on a motorcycle. And that happened. And then there was a fight in an airport that he broke up, that they charged him for fighting. Then they looked at the videos and realized that his buddy was jumped in the airport by a person who actually worked at the airport. And those two incidents where there were no charges in either case were enough to put him, were enough for a judge to bring him in for a probation violation. And so as just, sometimes destiny just, works itself out the way it does. He called me that morning and said, hey, if you have time, can you come to this probation hearing? Like, I keep telling you how crazy this judge is. I want you to see this firsthand. So I literally, I looked at Saj, who is in the audience, who's worked with me for 7 or 8 years, who's my partner and chief of staff. I said, I'm going to go to Meek's thing today. And I get there, and the first thing is the judge shows up 45 minutes late. And I'm a little bit annoyed. I'm expecting everyone to respect each other's time. And then the probation officer and district attorney both get up and speak glowingly about him and recommend no sentence. I looked at the lawyers and said, why are we here? You've got a probation officer and a DA recommending no sentence. They said, don't worry about it. Nobody ever gets sentenced in that situation. And an hour later, the judge said, I'm sending you to state prison for 2 to 4 years. And that for me was like, you just talk about a life-changing moment. Like, I could never explain it to everybody here the way I felt it, but watching what had become one of your closest friends get sent to prison for not committing a crime, and they take him away in front of you, and he's taking his wallet out of his pants and his watch off, and they're putting him in handcuffs. I just looked at him and I said, I'm not going to stop until I get you out of prison. And then, fortunately, there was a woman next to me I'd never met who was Jay-Z's partner from Rock Nation. And she said, hi, I'm Dez. We talked on the phone once. I'm not stopping either. And the two of us basically said, this is so wrong. We have to fix it. And for the next 6 months, I barely worked. I had trouble focusing on Fanatics and my day job because I was so upset by what I saw happen. And we basically led the charge to get, Meek out of prison. And what was really interesting, and I'll just wrap it up with this, what was really interesting was we spent all the time up front with, and by the way, they told us, and this is an interesting legal thing, because, I called the lawyers and I said, something's wrong here. I want to get investigators. And they said, no, you can't, the defense can't hire investigators. I said, okay, well, I'm not the defense. I'm hiring investigators. And we hired, 10 or 20 investigators. And we kept looking at the judge. And the judge turned out to be, crooked and lots of bad things about the judge. Meek kept saying to me, Michael, I never did what I was charged of when I was a kid, when I was 19. He was charged for pointing a gun at multiple police officers. Sure enough, a couple months later, we start investigating the police officers, and we find out the first officer comes forward and says, oh, no, he never pointed the gun. The whole thing's a lie. Like, what'd you say? Like, oh, he didn't point the gun. Yeah, can you sign the affidavit? Sure, signs the affidavit. I called Meek and said, you're going to be out of prison. We were at the Super Bowl last year. The Eagles were in the Super Bowl. I called Meek and said, you're going to be out of prison in a couple of days. And obviously, I had no clue. Signed affidavit from the police officer saying that he never pointed the gun. Found out the cop that charged him was on the district attorney's list of officers too dirty to testify, that his testimony shouldn't have been used. We still couldn't get him out of prison. And so, fortunately, the Supreme Court stepped in April and ordered his release, which was actually literally, about a year ago right now. And that was the fun part of it, where he left prison and we went to the Sixers when we beat the Heat in the fifth game and closed out the playoff series. So hopefully he'll bring us good luck in the playoffs this year.
That's an amazing story. So all of that led to the organization you call Reform?
Yeah, so really what happened was, I thought originally this was just about a horrific judge mistreating Meek. And by the way, she's horrific, and she mistreated him. But that wasn't, what I realized during the process was that the entire system was fundamentally broken. And when you have a guy who it's now been proven that he didn't commit the crime that he was charged of, and we can't get him out of prison, now I'm realizing the whole system's fundamentally broken. And my conversation, I would talk to him on the phone from prison every day, shift it from, we have to get you out of prison, to as soon as we get you out of prison, we need to do something about this. And, what I realized was that there's look, I grew up in Lafayette Hill and, lived 5 minutes from here. This was not my world. I knew nothing about it. I'm not embarrassed about that either. Like, a lot of people say, like, oh, that's kind of pathetic. You took, your celebrity friend who, you had to go through his situation and realize that the criminal justice system was broken. Well, guess what? I had no exposure to it. But what I realized was it was really broken. And so as soon as he got out of prison, I started, I basically said, we're going to start what I hope can be the most impactful kind of movement within criminal justice reform. And I said to Meek, now that you're out of this, I think you should put $5 million behind this foundation we're going to start. And I committed, a meaningful amount of money. Then my next phone call was to, Jay-Z and Robert Kraft. And both of those guys said yes. So within, weeks of him getting out of prison, you had myself, Robert Kraft, Jay-Z, and Meek Mill, who were committed to start this foundation / movement. And we're fortunate we then brought in Dan Loeb, Mike Novogratz, Clara and Josiah, who just bought the Brooklyn Nets, and Robert Smith, who's the richest African-American man in the country. And we launched this in January with $50 million committed capital. Well, we hired Van Jones as the CEO to run it. And, our goal is pretty simple. We want to get 1 million people out of the system over the next 5 years while keeping communities really safe. And I'll tell you this, people told me I was nuts when I came up with the number. I'll tell you, I have a really good friend of mine who's a very important person within government, and I showed him the presentation. He said, this is incredible, but you should take the 1 million down to 10,000 people. I said, actually, I think I should take the 1 million to 2 million people. He was kind of saying, you got everything right, but your goal is too ambitious, and I kind of felt like it wasn't ambitious enough. I can tell you now, we're focused 100% on fixing the probation and parole system, where there's 6.7 million people in America in the criminal justice system. We have 5 times the rate of incarceration as the whole rest of the world. And there's 4.5 million people on probation and parole. And I think if you ask me today, knowing what I know, I think that number should be half or less. And we're working, and by the way, we're starting in Pennsylvania first, to how do we change the laws. And I'll tell you what, it's been, I've never learned more than I have in the last year and a half. And, I think we're going to get, I'm bullish we're going to get some business results to what's a pretty political issue.
No different than your sports fandom. If you have passion, it matters.
Yeah, the difference is, though, you're in business, when something doesn't make sense, you fix it and go. And and I have no interest in politics whatsoever. My first, by the way, I joke all the time because we're really focused hard on, Pennsylvania is our first state, because Pennsylvania, just so everybody knows, Pennsylvania is the 3rd worst state in the country on criminal justice. So I was just looking at New York to Pennsylvania. We have 3 times the rate of probation and parole in Pennsylvania versus New York. So 1 in every 35 people in Pennsylvania are on probation and parole. Think about that. 1 in every 35 people. Now, by the way, how many people in this room are on probation and parole today? Don't see any. I see one hand. Thank you for the one hand back there. You know, if you just go into Philadelphia and ask people, are you on probation and parole? Most people's hands go up in the city, and so it's just the system's fundamentally broken. I mean, I met a guy who literally sold a teeny amount of cocaine, you know, hundreds of dollars of cocaine 10 years earlier, and he made an illegal U-turn. They sent him back to prison for an illegal U-turn. Okay, and this shit happens every single day. So fixing probation laws are really important. I think it's actually the easiest part of the criminal justice system because it's not like there's no debate about, you know, this person murdered somebody and should they get a second chance. This is like, hey, the person smoked weed and they're getting sent back to prison, which is, by the way, the number one reason people go to prison for probation violations is for smoking weed. I mean, yeah, I can't imagine I send anybody to prison for smoking weed.
So in an era of player activism, you're unique as an owner, as a future more significant owner potentially. I mean, it's a unique platform to take on, and I frankly hats off to you.
Appreciate that. You know, look, I didn't look to take it on. I mean, people say to me all the time, like, you know, why'd you get involved? I got involved because a good friend of mine was getting screwed over and I couldn't watch it happen. And then, like, you know, your entrepreneurial skills, you know, kick in and you're like, I have to do something about this. But look, I think players are very fortunate that they have big platforms that they can use to make the world a better place. And I think, to be honest, when this happened in November of 2017, there were a lot of people who called me and said, Michael, don't get involved. Michael, this is going to be bad for your business. Michael, it will be bad for the Sixers. This will be bad for, Fanatics. Fans won't want to buy from me. I was kind of like, okay, cool, let's go. Like, I was unfazed by any of it because it was, they were coming after my friend and, it was so wrong. And, look, I think hopefully, I will say that I think in a way, hopefully, because I was sucked into this issue and, I think people, probably one of the few, if not only, people in sports ownership to take on an issue the way I've taken it on. I hope it encourages, other teams and other owners to find things that they really care deeply about. You can't do it if you don't care deeply about it. But for me, this was so personal. So I think it's necessary, but it's definitely not something people have had the interest or courage to do up until this point.
That's great. So there are a lot of future sports industry folks here, some that are involved in the industry today. What's the theme of this symposium today is the future of sports. What advice would you have for people in the audience, for people who are interested in the industry about what they're going to see in the future?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'd say is you got to figure out, I say to people all the time, when you figure out what you want to do from a career perspective, and I have friends that sell companies or and then they're looking what to do next, or they left a job or got fired from a job and they ask me advice. And I always say, to me, there's a couple criterias. One is the opportunity a big enough opportunity? And then 2 is you working with really good people. And I think if you can't do both, you shouldn't do it. In retail, I'd say there are very few really good opportunities in retail. So if you came to me and said you were considering a career in retail, I'd say, in a lot of cases, find a new career. Like, it's not going to be a good career. By the way, there's good, like in any industry, there's good and bad. There are lots of great businesses in retail, but there are more bad businesses. I think sports is a great business. Like, I think it's really a great business. So I'm a huge fan of the sports industry. I'm involved in 2 significant businesses, Fanatics and the Sixers and Devils. And I think if this is an industry that you have passion about and something that you truly love, I think you should go for it. And I think you're going to continue to find great opportunities. I think there's lots of entrepreneurial opportunities. Look what we've done. We've taken a business that we bought for a few $100 million. It's now, last valuation was worth $4 or $5 billion when we raised money a couple years ago at Fanatics. I think we've created a lot of value through selling merchandise. I think sports gambling is going to be, great value created in that. I've been saying what a big opportunity I think that is. So I think the sports industry is a great industry, and I think you're going to find great entrepreneurial opportunities in it. So I'm a real fan of doing it.
Michael Rubin, we appreciate you being here today.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.